And so what we're going to do is we're going to roll a video that gives you the basic story, so we don't have to go through all the details with Sandra and Brian. We can get to the meat of the issue. We can get to the making the movements happen. We can get to how we might be inspired and learn from their mission and maybe even join along with them. So if we could roll the video
when
of
you're
Sandra
told
and Brian.
That the world that you believed you were going to live in is no longer there, you have to either choose to curl up into a ball or act. And for better or worse, Sandra described me as a golden retriever who sees a bright shiny object and runs at it, and this was a bright shiny object that I had to run at.
My name is Brian Wallach. I am 38 years old. At the age of 37, I was diagnosed with ALS. I know you don't often hear from people with ALS in hearings like this. You don't, because we're diagnosed, we die.
We're just over 5 minutes.
My voice will be stronger tomorrow. That was a struggle to get through it. Being diagnosed with ALS today is a death sentence. There is no cure. I will not see my daughters grow up. Not because ALS can't be cured, but because we've underfunded the fight against ALS year after year after year. After I was diagnosed, every doctor we saw said the same thing. I'm sorry, but we can't help you. Initially, we didn't know what to do, but then we realized that if the system won't help us, we have to remake the system.
One thing that's so terrifying about the healthcare system today is that the power really doesn't sit with the patients. The idea that we could flip the script, it's really powerful for everyone who is living every day with a whole set of health issues that are not being addressed.
If we cure ALS, we have the potential to cure Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, and a litany of other diseases, as they're actually all connected. Most people don't know that. In fact, when I was diagnosed, I had no idea.
What is so special about Brian and Sandra is that they realize you have to fight.
What we're doing here is not that different from a political campaign.
Once we realized that there were skills and friends we had that could have an impact and accelerate this work, there was no question about, do we sit on the sidelines or do we act?
Everyone says you can't solve this thing. Can we figure out a way to prove them wrong? Can we actually do this? Is this insane? Why am I not just sitting at home with my kids right now? Nothing good is easy.
This is not a movie. Our time is short.
I don't think there's any test of the human spirit more telling than someone telling you you don't have a long time to live and responding in this way, not saying this is something I'm going to get done before I die, but we're going to get this done and I'm going to live. We're going to get this done for everyone.
So give me tomorrow and we can laugh at yesterday, but I won't pretend there ain't nothing wrong today. And I don't want to close my eyes on the progress that we made, but for every inch there is a mile of mistakes. So go on, oh go on, my baby, go on, oh honey, oh go on, my baby, go on, all the way.
Brian, if you could bring Sandra and Brian to the screen. There they are.
Hi, Rob.
Sandra and Brian. Can you hear us?
We absolutely can. Thank you so much for having us. Great to join you.
Thanks so much for making the time to be with us. You're at home right now, I gather.
Yes, we are.
That's wonderful. I told everybody before we brought you on that we met through Sarah Berghorst, because maybe 6 months ago I was talking to her about, are we going to have twin, with COVID, and we're going to set it up, and let's be there, let's be together in person and take the risk. But the thing is, I need somebody can really carry the end of this thing. And that's hard because this is I don't know if you've watched earlier today, there's a lot of emotion bouncing around in this room. And she said, oh, I know who. Sandra and Brian. And there you are. I'm getting over being all choked up from your video, by the way, so well done. But I want to start with a question. Through this extraordinary journey, which we'll come back to, of making a movement happen, which is really everything that Greg was just talking about, making a movement happen. What's one thing that most surprised you, and what can we learn from it?
Well, I have two answers. The first one is more of a meta answer.
Meta answer.
And that is that I am alive today to be here with you. Because most ALS patients live 2 to 5 years. So I am in year 5, which is amazing. So every day I celebrate the chance to be here and do something. The second answer is that I was surprised about how people reacted to us when we went public with our diagnosis. We had just moved to a new neighborhood, and we were both worried that people would view us as a sad family. But instead, they rallied around us to help us to make real the hope that we felt at the time. Brian's saying, what about you, Sandra?
What about you, Sandra?
What about you? What do you have to say? I think, Brian and I met on the 2008 Obama campaign. So certainly we can appreciate more than the average bird what it means to start a movement and to mobilize community. But I think I was really struck by the response of the ALS community, families and patients who really jumped into this work with us once we shared that we wanted to start this movement, AM ALS. And, we were just yesterday celebrating the 2nd annual Lou Gehrig Day, and the Cubs Stadium, where we were able to be a part of the celebration, was filled with hundreds of people wearing AM ALS shirts and advocating and trying to bring awareness. And it was mind-boggling to look at Brian and think, wow, just like a few years ago, we sent out an email saying we'd like to get this started. So it's something you can intellectually process, but then once you initiate something like this and see it grow across the country, and now just within 3 years, it's become the preeminent advocacy organization, not just for ALS, but I think we're really trying to create the new model for patient advocacy driving change for any disease. And I think we're seeing that grow and grow, and it's shocking, even as it happens to us and with us.
Well, Sandra, to take that and turn it from we're going to create a movement to support those with ALS, their families, communities, help make this better, and then to convert that into we're going to find a model that can help people with any illness or affliction is truly generous and quite an extraordinary vision. And I want to come back to that vision you're going to build for the role of patients and their families and communities and what we can do to be better at grappling with these things together. But before we do, I'd like to go back to that first moment, maybe even the first day, when you suspected that something was amiss and you maybe had that diagnosis. You referred to this, Sandra, in the video as a test of the human spirit. I don't think you're going to get any argument on that here. How did you face that test in those early days?
Well, we had a 2-year-old and had just brought our newborn second daughter home from the hospital. And that was the day that Brian pulled up in front of the house and said that a doctor had told him that he likely had 6 months left to live. So I don't think that there's any way to explain what that felt like that can capture that moment. But, I think anyone in the audience can just try to sit with that for a second. We were as shocked as any of you might be to get that diagnosis. We had no family history. Brian was an athletic, charismatic 37-year-old prosecutor.
I think you referred to him as a golden retriever.
Yeah, that
video.
too.
Do you take umbrage on that, Brian?
Brian says that's a fair description.
Great. So sorry to interrupt.
No. I mean, I think we just sat in our living room as our 2-year-old and newborn slept upstairs, and we bawled on the floor of our living room. And then the first thing Brian said was, "Let's go to the Verizon store." And I was like, "What are you even talking about?"
By the way, they're not a sponsor, so you don't have to.
No caveats, yeah. But Brian said, "Well, I want to get more memory on my iPhone because I want to take videos of me with the girls so that if I die, they remember me." And so about months later, we met with a doctor in Boston, and we'd gone to him. Yeah, in the hopes that he would give us a different diagnosis. And he said to Brian, "I cannot tell you that you don't have ALS. But I want to ask you a question. You are 37 years old and well-spoken. At least you seem to be. And you have a background that gives you a unique connection to movements that have been successful in the past. I know you're going through a lot, but what if you spoke out? What if you took your connections and built something to change this disease that has been terminal for 160 years?" My mom replied, "How rude." Sandra replied, "What are you even saying?" And Brian replied, "That is a really good question." So from that, we decided that we could not have my story be the same story as every ALS patient who came before us. Instead, we had to act for Brian and for everyone else who was told that there is nothing that can be done for them.
So, Brian, from that doctor, the hero was called, and you took up the challenge. And
the golden retriever was
Brian,
called.
It
Really
was also you, Sandra, who took up that challenge, the hero's challenge. Thank you for that moment. The power is not with the patients. What do you mean by that, and what do you propose we do about it?
What is that? The biggest surprise to me when I was diagnosed is that there was no protocol and there was no group that was bringing together patients, not just to tell their story, but to actually empower them to change the system. Because what happens, patients are told, there's nothing you can do. Go home, eat ice cream, travel, and get your affairs in order. So that then we realized that there was a lot that patients could do. Because when I was diagnosed, patients were not empowered and were marginalized. And before my diagnosis, I was lucky to have led the life that I did. Obviously, I'm a white male, and I have a family, and who had been successful in their work. For me to go from that purview to a place of utter disempowerment was eye-opening. And what we realized was, if you're able to, as Greg said so well, build a movement that is not about one person, but is about shared values.
Great.
In the face. In this case, about saving lives. We can unlock the secret to solving not just ALS, but so many other rare diseases that affect 1 in 6 people in the world.
Brian and Sandra, not only have you effected legislative change in Washington that hadn't happened for, forever, you've allowed resources to be allocated, public and private. You've built a nonprofit that's thriving, that's growing. You've built this movement, brought people together, given them options, empowered them. But then you went another step, Sandra, and you founded Synapticure, I believe, a for-profit company. Tell us about Synapticure.
Absolutely. So Brian and I co-founded Synapticure because we realized that many patients did not have access to high quality care the way that Brian and I were so privileged to have, right? We had access to the top-notch ALS clinicians, to genetic testing, to clinical trial decision-making support. And the reality today is that nearly half of the population diagnosed with ALS doesn't see an ALS clinic even once in their whole journey. So you can imagine if someone told you that half of cancer patients never see an oncologist, you'd be shocked. And that is the situation today in ALS. So Brian and I feel very strongly that we have an opportunity and a responsibility to do everything we can to democratize care for ALS patients across the country. And as we began to do this work, we realized that this lack of access to high quality care is not only a problem in ALS, but it's very similar in much of neurology. And so these problems that we see in ALS are a part of the system in dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. And so Synapticure is a teleneurology company that brings the best care to ALS patients and personalizes programs and care plans for them to give them the best chance to survive this disease as long as possible and do so within the comfort of their home, which for a population that is incredibly disabled is very important. And so we have been very excited to have launched Synapticure earlier this year and have had an amazing response from the patient community as we've gotten started.
That's extraordinary. Would you do us a favor and please keep us informed of the progress of AM ALS and Synapticure? I'm eager to see, who knows, maybe some of us could help in some way. Briefly, what could we do to find out more and engage?
So I would say the following. Obviously, we've got websites for both, but this group that you have gathered here today is uniquely positioned to push us farther and faster than we ever thought possible. And what I mean by that, with most disease fights, we are trapped in a box. And what we have tried to do is to break down the walls of that box. And once we break down the walls, we have a moment of, oh, what do we do? So for people in the room, they have done it before. They have seen how you can go from hope to real change. That is what I would ask everyone to do today. So, the lifetime risk of having ALS is 1 in 300, which means that someone in this room will likely have ALS. So what we would love to have this community do is to think about how we can push the boundaries. And then to reach out to us, to say, I have an idea, to push the boundaries. Here's how we will do it. Because that is how we have been able to move so fast in a disease that has not changed in over 100 years. So that would be my hope. I mean that very sincerely. Because when you have people who are able to dream and who are able to make that dream real, you can build a better future today, not 10 years from now.
Brian and Sandra, I hear in the midst of this darkness you've been facing, you've created, you've generated, you've sparked light that's almost blinding. I hear gratitude. Gratitude. I'm kind of with your mom. What the hell is he saying? I get it. Gratitude, resolve, commitment. Every day I celebrate the chance to be here. You know, we all hear that platitude and we try hard to understand what it means. And I can work really hard. I'm a bit of a thespian, so I can sit there and think about, well, it's my method acting will tell me how to, but you can't really know it until you've been in your situation. And when you were in that situation, we heard earlier today, Raghava KK said that Transcend is about loss, liberation, and mystery. And there's no greater loss than you experienced in that moment that you were faced with. But somehow you rose above that. You transcended. And in a way, I guess, maybe I'm going too far, but there's an odd sort of perverse liberation that comes in the sense that now this is the transcendence that the universe has placed in front of me, and it's my decision. It's our decision whether we're going to try and make something happen. And you embrace the mystery. You embrace the mystery. You even said, Sandra, unlock the secret. How do we unlock the secret to support people and eventually cure this thing and give us and everyone else the lives they deserve? And by doing this, my goodness, talk about transcend. This is a legacy. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I will poll people and we'll find some people. If you want, we'll sit down with you and we'll have a conversation. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. And whatever it is, I'm so grateful we got the opportunity to be with you today and to be a small part of your extraordinary journey. Sandra and Brian, thank you. Hey. Hey, golden retriever, you did good. You did good. Good boy. See you later.
Thank you, everyone.